You bring these people on, you never challenge them. That's what made sovereignty here.
We're going down a rabbit hole, and this is a pointless debate.
That's because you all talk such rubbish when you come on these programmes.
This is Alistair Campbell, and you may know him as a result of this. That's correct, head of communications, and in charge of persuading the media that the Iraq War was the right direction in which to go. And this is Alex Phillips, a Brexiteer with some very interesting opinions.
White, and I don't feel ashamed. I am a woman, and I don't have balls down there, but I have balls, I tell you that.
Thanks for clarifying that. And this video is about their clash on the BBC. If you're new to the channel, be sure to click that subscribe button.
It's the bonfire of 4,000 regulations, which was just a gimmick, wasn't it, in Sunak's campaign. It's a huge distraction from the elephant in the room, which is actually the TCA, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. And as a result of that, we find ourselves, for instance, unable to give state aid to critical sectors. We find ourselves unable to deviate from the EU in any significant way that could be part of an ambitious post-Brexit industrial strategy.
So I haven't shown the whole thing because of copyright, but I am going to say this. It's really interesting when you start breaking down what she has to say about how much detail there is in what they actually want to do with the UK. But it's also interesting that part of the reason for that agreement was this: Northern Ireland and the Good Friday Agreement, which she totally ignores. Part of the reason for all of this is because we don't want a border on the island of Ireland. And as a result of that, we've got to have some sort of connection to the EU. We cannot fully separate. I don't see any BBC reporter continually pulling that up with Brexiteers, and it does become quite frustrating, and it also begs the question, why is this not a central argument?
And so, frankly speaking, no, I don't think we've really seen any form of serious Brexit yet.
And as usual, we're hunting Bigfoot. As usual, it's just around the corner, just a couple of years. Just tune in next week and you'll catch the Brexit benefits.
Right. So it's not independent. The UK is not independent at the moment?
In all but name. We're still in Brussels regulatory orbit.
Alistair Campbell, I wonder if the reason Labour did so well in the local elections in places like Medway, Swindon, Middlesbrough, because Sir Keir Starmer has managed to neutralise the issue of Brexit. And you could be in danger of blowing that up, couldn't you?
No, not at all. Look, first of all, I didn't say and haven't said that I think Keir risks looking weak. I don't think he does look weak. I think he's got a very clear plan for what he's trying to do. I'm simply
But you just disagree with it?
No, I don't. Where I disagree is on the politics of it. I don't believe that this idea that the dial is not shifting on Brexit opinion, I just don't accept it.
So the dial's changing, no one likes this, it's not working. Labour should continue? Seems that Alistair Campbell is still trying to tread on that little tightrope walk.
And in the speech I made tonight, I quoted Wayne Gretzky, the Canadian ice hockey player. I skate to where the puck is going, not where it's been. Things are moving very, very quickly because...
In what respect?
Well, for example, that thing today, we're not going to agree on much, but Sunak was utterly ridiculous in promising something that deep down, by his own economic assessment, he knew was going to be damaging, which is why he's ended up stopping it. We've already lost 4% of the economy. We've already lost £40 billion of public services. The pound is weaker than it was. Growth is smaller than it was. Inflation is higher. It's not all to do with Brexit, but a lot of it is.
We haven't already lost 4% of the economy. The OL says over 10 years.
Our economy is much weaker than it was, and in every sector you talk to.
Fishing was the reason he voted for Brexit. The reality, he says, is not what was promised.
The deal we got was very, very poor, very poor. So I probably would change my vote if I'm honest.
Do you feel that the Brexit-related losses forced Simon Spurrell to sell a majority stake in his company?
I feel betrayed and really quite let down by a government that promised much and delivered nothing.
I'm here in Ramsgate in Thanet, and as you said, it was very pro-Brexit, around 64% of people voting to leave in 2016. Now, I've been here for the last couple of days. I'd say, done my own little straw poll. I'd say it's about 10-1 against now.
Well, people here very much think they're sort of caught in some sort of Brexit purgatory because, of course, we had to have that other deal that was the protocol. The protocol very much meant to protect the integrity of the single market.
That whether it was Johnson lying about his oven-ready deal...
How easy it is. We put it in, slam it in the oven, take it out, there it is, get Brexit done, take the country forward, unite and level up.
or Sunak telling us we're going to get this dynamic
So you
growing
think
economy.
Brexit's a disaster. So why aren't you saying to Keir Starmer, look, it's a disaster, say it, and that should be Labour policy at the next election?
What I've said is that I think in Labour's manifesto they should say Brexit, we accept the referendum result, Brexit as delivered by the Tories with their bungled deal is not working. We are going to have to look at it again. That will involve some sort of renegotiation, and that is what we'll do if we get a Labour government.
There is a massive amount of arrogance coming from a lot of Brits, including Alistair Campbell, when he turns around and he says, we'll just renegotiate a deal. How many times are the EU going to renegotiate with us? Or eventually are they just going to turn around and go, you know what, enough's enough, we're not renegotiating. How do we have leverage there? We're tied into this agreement and now we're going to have to pull out? If we pull out without their consent, that could breach international law, and it could also put us into a bigger pariah state excluded from the United States, who could put pressure on us, as well as the EU.
Alex, your party and the kind of Brexit that you said that you want is not popular now. Brexit's way down the list of priorities when it comes to voters' concerns, and you and those on the right of the Conservative Party don't have the kind of leverage that you used to have anymore.
Yeah, I'd actually agree with what you're saying in that respect. And of course, public opinions and attitudes shift. I don't think all of a sudden people have fallen out of love with Brexit.
Except every single indicator and graph that's being released at the moment is showing that people have fallen out of love with it.
So I think a lot of things have happened since Brexit, and people have fallen out of love with politics. They actually don't feel like they can trust their politicians to deliver.
And that's because Brexiteers like Alex went around telling everyone you could have everything. You could be part of the single market, you could keep free movement, you'd have your independence, you'd be able to sell fish. They said contradictory things. We'd be rich. None of that has happened. And she wonders why people have fallen out of love with Brexit and politics. It's because they fabricated a load of lies in order to get people to vote for Brexit.
It's been 7 years since that vote, and we're finding that, in total, actually, about 260,000 EU laws are in UK statutes, and they'd found 4,000 down the back of the sofa they wanted to do something about.
Yeah, but they're laws that were passed by UK parliaments.
Well, they were, but they weren't able to be properly scrutinised. No amendments were able to be.
So they were scrutinised in the UK Parliament, but they were also scrutinised by British politicians in the EU Parliament, which she always ignores, except when it suits her to say she knows how it operates. We also had people with the Commission, we also had people select the lady in front of you, we had people in the Council, all giving their views as to how the EU should be run, and we were a leading member. And what we've got now is we're a rule taker, not a rule maker. All because of Brexit.
No amendments were able to be made. Those laws were not made by the British people for the British people. Of course they weren't. I've sat in that parliament. I was elected to it. Don't try and pretend I don't know how the EU system works.
I'm talking about our parliament enacts EU law.
Of course it does.
They are
but
not
it doesn't
EU
really
laws
have
passed
any.
down. No,
it's
we're not
put into UK statute. I'm not actually denying that. But what the point
so
of this is...
don't say that they're laws that have been imposed on us by Brussels. They've been enacted by UK
there was no way as a member
government.
of the EU. There was no way as a member of the EU to reject them, and you know that as well as
your
I do.
MPs here could. That's what made sovereignty here.
We're going down a rabbit hole.
Certainly heading into Wonderland. Both sides have an argument that you could argue have an element of correctness to them. At the end of the day, the UK government could reject bills coming in from the EU. It is a cooperative democracy. It is not an elected democracy. That's why we don't vote for the president, because you might start having people say, I'm going to run for president, it's a public vote, and if you vote me in, I'm going to give more powers to the EU. And then you have a huge, huge issue between the nation states as to what do they vote for and how do you organise that. That's why it's a cooperative agreement. It balances power better.
And this is a pointless debate.
That's because you all talk such rubbish when you come on these programmes.
Excuse me, that's just unnecessarily rude.
But it's true.
I'm sorry. You haven't actually let me talk, so if you would let me talk, perhaps you might agree with me.
Well, let her finish, and then I will come back to you.
Because I don't think you're, particularly being a good contributor right now, because you're just being essentially rude.
Don't make the point.
Lies upon lies upon lies. That's all we ever hear from these politicians from the Brexit argument, offering us literally unicorns and gold and not really giving anything substantial. And listen to Marina Purkis pointed out to Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Your Brexit, do you care?
Well, people voted for Brexit. That's democracy.
Of course they did. I'm surprised I didn't vote for Brexit.
You think you know better than the British people?
I think you lied to people and they believed you.
I think the British people are more intelligent than that. The British people weighed up Brexit.
Are you telling me they should have known you were a liar?
Now, what I think a lot of people, when they voted for Brexit, wanted was essentially this country to take its future in its own hands and to make decisions that would benefit our industries, that would make decisions that benefit our communities, that would actually lift the wages of those who are the lowest paid.
We're starting to see from the Reform Party that what they're looking for isn't the Singapore-on-Thames, but a socialist one. However, the reason why I kept that Jacob Rees-Mogg clip in is because he wants a Singapore-on-Thames. He doesn't want this socialist system. So we've literally got two groups of Brexiteers that are divided on how to run the country. Do you run it as a socialist system and you have protectionism, or do you open it up to free trade markets? And they don't know between the two of them.
To actually secure our borders, which is something else that's not been done. To actually enable our fishermen to have a self-sustaining industry and actually make a profit from it. None of these things have actually been...
We've got global issues, and they're not going to be resolved by isolating ourselves from the rest of the world, which is exactly what they want to do. And as for the fishermen, if she actually bothered to go and speak to any of them, she might actually realise that the problem is all the red tape that we've got importing into the EU, which then means we've got to export even further afield, and the further you go, that is literally a tariff.
Because frankly, we've got a government that treats Brexit like a gimmick and doesn't have any courage or conviction to see it through. And
Rishi Sunak is a Brexiteer. Rishi Sunak is a Brexiteer. Boris Johnson.
Frankly speaking, we're in a situation now where the government should be actually relishing the opportunity to take control of various laws and being able to put into place things, like I said, state aid into critical sectors. We're seeing right now AstraZeneca moving to Ireland. We're seeing car manufacturing moving to China.
OK, Alistair Campbell, your turn.
Will any of these people who fought so hard for Brexit ever face up to their own responsibility and face the fact that what they all promised was a pack of lies, what they all promised was never going to work? None of you have ever brought forward a plan that says this is Brexit and this is how it works without damaging us here in the UK. And when I say you talk nonsense, let me finish. All of those laws that you talked about were enacted by elected British governments and elected British parliaments. The fact that you in Europe couldn't do anything about it underlines that the sovereignty lay here. So all your lies about taking back control, more money for the NHS, sovereignty, immigration, the rest of it, you have failed on every
I knew you were
thing.
going to come up with, the money for the NHS. Nothing to do with me, not my campaign. And it's very rich, a man who essentially was part of telling lies to invade a country, to accuse me of dishonesty.
I think you might have lost the argument there, my dear. If I may patronise you even more. Honestly.
No, that's it now.
Yes, I will.
No, that's
sorry.
it. No, that's it.
No,
that's
sorry.
It.
You bring these people on, you never challenge them. You let them talk.
Just watch the reaction, her face change. It's incredible she's not happy.
Rubbish about Brexit, and it's happened on the BBC for year after year after year.
OK, I am not going to take that from you.
And why would you? But on the flip side, it's true. How can you compare economists with PhDs to that of Nigel Farage? He got more airtime on the BBC than anyone else, and yet currently the rejoining EU party can't even get onto the BBC at the moment, but the Reform Party can, and they've been around for a lot less.
With respect, Mr. Campbell, thank you.
You don't have to.
Thank you very much for being on the programme.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on the
having
programme.
me.
I honestly don't think people realise how ticked off a lot of Remainers are, and now a lot of Brexiteers. And unfortunately, we're seeing this in politics, where in the local elections, only 23% of the public actually turned up to vote. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. Please make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. It helps with the channel. And a big thanks to all my Patreons and YouTube supporters. You keep this channel going and growing.